Hey everybody, Ben here from the Bonehead podcast and welcome to Theory Thursday. This is where we get together and we take a bit of a deep dive into one specific part of Blood Bowl. Whether it's stats or strats, the goal here is to learn as much as we can about this game that we love in a vain attempt to get a little bit better at it. So we did a top 5 common rules mistakes video last week before, and one of the things that was raised was I get confused when I'm assisting a block. How do I know who's supporting, who's not supporting? How do I figure out my strength? So naturally, we're going to take a few minutes today, look at the theory behind it, and then we're going to do some practical. Okay, so we'll start off with the offensive side. In fact, we should probably start off talking about the difference between offensive and defensive. Offensive blocking is where you are targeting somebody else. You are the blocker. Blocking people is offensive behavior. Okay, basically the best way to do that. Generally speaking, the offensive player is the player who's active at the time. Defensive player, defensive blocking and defensive assists is for the target. So offensive is attacking and defensive is being targeted. So figuring out offensive assists. So this is going to be where you get +1 strength when you're blocking. So assisting players must be marking the block target. Okay, so you have to have a friendly model. A friendly model counts as being assisting if they're in base contact with the target who's being blocked, and if they themselves are not marked by anybody except the block target. Now this is why the rules are a bit crunchy, is because it's a bit like, huh, what? Okay, basically you get someone counts as being assisting if they are in base contact with the target player and no other opposition players. So that's basically the quickest way to surmise it, is you get an assist if you've got a dude standing next to the target and he's not touching anybody else that isn't friendly. Again, we'll have a look at that when we do our practical bits in a minute. That gives +1 strength per friendly player to the blocker. So say you're blocking with a strength 3 guy and you've got one person assisting, you are now strength 4. And when it comes to blocking, you want to be more than your opponent to get 2 dice, more than double your opponent to get 3 dice, and preferably at least equal to your opponent to get 1 dice. So a strength 2 player with 1 assist would be strength 3. Blocking against a strength 3 player would give you 1 dice. Now once you've gone through and figured out the offensive strength, okay, best way to do this is the blocking player. Do I have assists next door to the target? X. That's my strength. Now we look at the defensive player and the defensive assists. So assisting players giving defensive assists should be marking the blocking player and must not be marked except by the blocking player. So again, what we do is we look at the person making the block in this situation and we go, right, is there a dude who is in base contact with that blocker and no other opposition players? Are they themselves unmarked? That gives +1 strength to the target. So in our example a second ago, a strength 3 player blocking a strength 3 player with a defensive assist would be a strength 3 player blocking a strength 4 player. And when you block a dude with more strength than you, you roll 2 dice and your opponent chooses, and that is a bad thing to do most of the time. So that's simple, right? That's cleared up everything. Everyone now knows what's going on. It's a lot of words and you're like, what now? Okay, how to check. Look at the target. Look at the player who is being blocked. Look at the player who is about to get smashed into the ground. Do the 9 grid check. Now we'll do this on video in a second, but start top left from the target. You work your way across and you check to see if you're getting any offensive assists next to the target. Then you do the same for the blocking player. Are you getting defensive assists on the blocker? That's the best way to do it. And in your mind you could be like, right, that guy is being targeted. Is there anybody next to him that is friendly to the blocker, that is not touching anybody else? Yes, I got 1, 2, cool. And the defensive player, you do the same. So we're going to cut to the overhead camera and have a look at it actually on the pitch. So over on the field cam, we've got the blue dude, which is a dwarf blocker. And we've got a white ring dude, which is a beastman from this is the College of Fire team painted by Ben and the College of Beasts team painted by me. So in this circumstance, blue is going to be the blocker and the white ring is going to be the target. Now, when you look at this, you've got, it's pretty evident that there's no assists, there's no supports, there's no one around. But how you would go through the process is you would basically, let me see if I can straighten this out because that's upsetting me. You would say, right, this is the blocker, this is the target. Remember, we said we would check the 9 boxes, and when I say the 9 boxes, I mean, so on the target is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. You've got this 9 square here around both players, and you want to check them because it's a great way to do quick maths. So what you would do is you would check for the target and you would check for the blocker themselves. Now the reason for that is because it's easy to calculate your blocking strength. So we're going to start checking this guy. So we check 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. We check around the target and then we check around the blocker as well. Okay, let's introduce some players. So in this circumstance we've got one player there doing the assist. So the blocker is blocking, and then we check for basically offensive assists. So we look at the target. Is there any friendly player next door to the target? No. Now we look at the blocking player. Is there any enemy player, essentially, or a friendly player to the target next to him? 1. Yes. We've got 1. Is this player in contact with any enemy players? No. So we get +1 assist in that circumstance. Then you finish checking all 9 squares and you're done. So in this circumstance here, we would have the blocker getting strength 3 because they're strength 3, this guy's strength 3, and they'd have +1 for that assist there. Now that's the most simple that it gets. In that circumstance, this becomes a strength 3 versus strength 4 block, which is a 2 dice, and the Beastman would choose, which is a bad situation. Although dwarves somehow get away with it most of the time. Now let's bring on a Marauder Warrior. And we'll bring on another Beastman there. We'll get rid of this Beastman. We'll bring on a Marauder there. Okay. So in this circumstance, we've got a bunch of players here. We'll check the target to see if there are any other offensive players there. So this is the target. So we check next door. No, no, yes. We've got an offensive player. Is he in base contact? No. So we get +1 for that. Then we finish. We've got another offensive player. Is he in base contact? Yes. With another target player, with another enemy player that's not being blocked. So he is a no-go. Then we can figure out the defensive assist. So we look at the blocking player. We look at him here. Is there anybody here that is friendly to the target or is an enemy to the blocker? Yes, this guy here. Then you check to see if he's in base contact with anything other than the attacker. Yes, he is. So that is a no-go. So in this circumstance, we get +1 here to the attacker, taking him from strength 3 to strength 4. And in that circumstance, you get a 2-die block. Now let's complicate things a little bit more because that is good fun. Okay, this is where it gets a bit crunchy. Now we go through that same process again. We look at the blocker, the target, and we look at assists. So the blocker is strength 3. We look at the target and we look adjacent to all of the squares and see if there are any friendly attacking players. So we've got a friendly attacking player here. We found a player. Is he in base contact with any other players? No. So we get +1 on the attack for him. Nothing there. We've got a player here. Is he in base contact with an enemy player? Yes. So we do not get to use him. And we continue checking all 9 squares. This guy here, he's friendly. Is he in contact? Yes. Don't get an assist there. So in this circumstance, the only assist for the offensive assist is this guy here. Then we do the same for defense. We pick up the blocking player and we look next door. Friendly? No, 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 no. Yes, but he's in base contact there. So that is a no-go, which means all we've got in this situation is this 1 assist. And let's bring in these guys here, because this can definitely happen in a game. This can be some of the most fun elements of Blood Bowl, is trying to tag and release assists, essentially. So in this circumstance, this player is blocking this player here. And we'll go through the 9-box model for the target, looking for offensive assists. So we take the target square and we check for offensive enemy players. That's what we're looking for. So we check the target square for players that are friendly to the blocker. So he is a friendly player, but he's in base contact with an enemy. He's a no-go. He is a friendly player, but he's in base contact with an enemy, so he's a no-go. He is an enemy player. We ignore that for now. He's a friendly player, but he's in base contact with an enemy player, so he's a no-go. So in that circumstance there, everybody's blocked out. You do it for the attacker, then you do the same thing for the defender. So we look at the blocking player here because we're looking to get stronger for the defender. Now, are there players next door to this player who is basically an enemy. Yes, but he's in base contact with an enemy that is not the attacker, so he's a no-go. And then we check 9 boxes. Here we go, got an enemy player, but he is also in base contact with another enemy player, so he's a no-go. But in this circumstance, if we took this player out and put him up there, we'd attack, and we're going to go through the same process again. I'm the attacker, I'm looking at my target. Do I have friends in base contact with the target? He's in base contact with the target, but he's also in base contact with an enemy, so he's no good to me. He's a friend, but he's in base contact with an enemy that's not my target, so he's no good to me either. And then that's it. And you flip over, we're going to do the defensive side here. So me as the Beastman player, I'm looking for my friends in contact with the dude who's starting a fight. So let's have a look. Up here, I've got a friend, but he's in base contact with this guy, so that's no good. Nothing there, nothing there, nothing there, nothing there. I've got a friend here. Is he in base contact with anybody? Just the target. So we get a big tick for there, so we get +1 to this block. So he would have no assists, he would have 1 assist. At strength 4 against strength 3, that's 2 dice to me as the Beastman player. As ever, there are exceptions to these rules, and there are 2 skills that are going to come up quite often that will affect the way that you calculate assisting blocks. Now, the first and the foremost and the most prominent of these is a strength skill called Guard. In Guard We Trust is a very reasonable sentence. So basically, Guard lets you give +1 assist even if you're touching an enemy player other than the target or the blocker. Basically, you get to ignore being touched by other players. It's just, I'm always going to give you +1 strength. So a Guard, to give an offensive assist, the assisting player must be marking the target player. That's it. So to give +1 for Guard, your Guard piece has to be in contact with the target player. That's it. Then you get +1 strength. Now, the cool thing about Guard is it works for defensive as well, as in it works if you are being blocked. So if you are being blocked and you've got a dude with Guard next door to the blocking player, you get +1 strength as well. So Guard is a really important skill. In this edition, there is a new skill that counters Guard, because this is the most complicated part of blocking, the most complicated part of Blood Bowl, therefore it has to have a suitable amount of depth. The defensive skill is a new skill, it's an agility skill during your opponent's turn. So if I have a player with defensive, it does nothing when I am blocking. But when you're blocking, anybody with Guard standing next to my defensive player doesn't get to use Guard. So a player with defensive is an ultimate marking player. Okay, it will turn off Guard in your opponent's turn, and it will just stop you from getting those assists because it's going to be marking that player as well. So defensive and Guard are 2 massively important pieces of this puzzle. So that is it. That is it in a nutshell. Hopefully this has been useful, and hopefully I've explained this in a good way. If I haven't, then please do let me know, because I'll take it down and I'll try again. But the way to check, player A is blocking player B. We go through this. We look at player B, we see if any of player A's friends are next door. If they are next door and they're not touching anybody else except for player B, you get a point. Then you check player A and see if any of player B's friends are standing next door to him. If they're standing next door to any player A's friends, that's a no-go. If they're not, player B gets a point as well. So hopefully the video's been useful. Please, like I said, do let me know if there's a different way you want me to do this kind of thing. It is complicated. As soon as you pick it up, it's fine, but do the 9-grid check. Do it both ways, and always talk to your opponent about what's going on. It's the most important thing of all. Agree what the situation is. If you're both wrong, you're both wrong, and then it's fair, I guess. Anyway, thanks very much for watching. We'll be back soon with more Blood Bowl content. Happy assisting blocks. Thanks very much for watching. We really appreciate your support. If you want to help support the channel even further, please like and subscribe, or come join us on our Patreon. We have early access to content, we get loads of feedback from you guys, and we try and do competitions as much as we can. Or you can get yourself some Bonehead podcast merch on our Spreadshirt site. So if you want to support a team, especially for the Bonehead Championship, you can pick up a shirt, a mug, things like that. It all helps support the channel, and we really appreciate it. Anyway, links below. Thank you very much. Happy blocking.